Well met, everyone. I am Rich the Lich, and today you are going to be a fly on the wall of my campaign preparation for my upcoming Eberron campaign for my group of 10 players, which begins this Saturday. If you are one of those players at the table on Saturday, please stop the video now. There will be some spoilers ahead, and I don't want you to get the secrets and inside scoop on everything that I'm brainstorming here. Let me give you a few sort of bullet points of overview. First off, I am creating an Eberron campaign starting this Saturday. I play with 10 players 2 times per month. We play every other Saturday. Sessions are about 5 to 7 hours in length. We play for a while. 10 PCs, there's a lot of considerations that come into play when you're dealing with a group of that size. Okay? Now, I talk about this in many of my videos. I am familiar with everyone at my table, greatly familiar. I play with my wife, my son, my cousin, people I've known for 30, 40, 45 years. People that I've role-played with for 25 years through, I can't tell you, countless D&D campaigns and editions. So we have a good group of people that I'm familiar with. I don't have to juggle personalities. I know what is taboo, which is basically nothing at my table. I know what I can cover. I know how to kind of pull at their heartstrings. I know how to push those buttons for them and get them irritated and whatnot. I know what they like. That's very important for your campaign. So 10 players is never recommended. 4 to 5, I think, is the sweet spot, but it is what it is. 5 to 7 hours is extremely important because I talk about this all the time. I need to make sure wherever I ramble here on this video, do I have enough to bring to the table to get me through that session? Oftentimes you can stay sort of flighty and thought and creative in your mind, especially as the DM, right? You can do this for yourself. It's like as though you're writing your own novel and you're excited about your own story, but then when you get to the table, you realize, wait a minute, that took up like 90 minutes of gameplay. I don't have much else to get them through the rest of the session, okay? So it gives me some sort of some barriers of what I need to work in. All right, so here we go. So that's about it. I have some house rules, things to consider. Don't worry about that. They're my house rules. And it goes without saying, of course, although I'm going to say it. This is my way, guys. It's just how I do, like I said. I want you to see it from the perspective of how I run things and how I create. And taking all of the video advice and suggestions, which I will say there's a few things that I oftentimes just throw away. I'm familiar with this, guys. I know my table. I know my game. There's things that I may have said on videos that I don't apply here. But for the most part, let's kind of just see where we are, right? I already lost my train of thought there, but let's do this. I'm going to create 5 bullet points, right? We're going to just create 5 big bubbles. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They will be my anchors. I need to say this. I don't know a whole lot about Eberron. I played in it back in 3rd edition. I have not read through the new Eberron Rising from the Last War yet. I have both the hardcover book and I have it all on D&D Beyond. Creative fuel is essential, guys. So when I'm thinking of overarching broad ideas for campaign direction, I need to consider the things I mentioned. I've got 10 players. I need to consider getting through gameplay session after session, 5-6 hours. I need to consider that I don't want to railroad the players. I want to give as much choice as possible. But I want to have a kind of rough flowchart and direction. That's just how I personally work, and I've been doing this long enough. I don't know a whole lot about Eberron, so I'm going to come up with ideas that just sound cool, that are not exclusive to any particular world. Hell, they might not even be cool ideas for D&D specifically. I'm going to pull from whatever is exciting to me. And then later, I'll look through the Eberron stuff, the content, the gazetteer, the regions, and try and figure out what would be the best region for that cool idea to fit in. And that's how I'll attach it to the world, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to approach this from the perspective of like a 7-year-old, right? When they create, we're creating art here, guys. When they create art, they're not confined and limited by deadlines. They're not worrying about who's a better concept artist. They're just drawing cool, fun stuff, right? So if I was drawing and painting the picture, if you will, there's something I've been thinking about for a really long time called Dragonfall. Dragonfall is inspired by a real-life occurrence, a phenomenon, something called whale fall. You should look it up. Just Google it in YouTube. Whale fall, the big giant sea creature. What happens is it dies and it sinks, its carcass sinks to the bottom of the ocean floor. And there's a cool video of scientists, I think, whatever, marine biologists and such, that are down there in a submarine. We're talking like 3,000 feet down where this carcass is hit. And how they found out about that, who knows? But it hits, and I don't know a whole lot about this lingo and the terms here, so I may be mispronouncing or saying the wrong things, but the ecological effect, not just in the area of how large the whale is, but we're talking miles and miles of ocean. The impact it has on the ecology of ocean life it's fascinating. It's phenomenal. It's a really interesting video. The amount of bacteria, amoebas and, plankton or whatever that latch onto this body. The creatures, the sea creatures that go down there and feed off of it. And then subsequently, the creatures that now swim down to feed on the creatures that are feeding on the whale. It just causes this ripple effect, which is just, it's fascinating because you're looking at something largest creatures on the planet, right? So for a long time, for over a year now, I've been thinking about creating a new world about Dragonfall. The elevator pitch is kind of based on the inspiration of Whalefall, but Dragonfall. For whatever reason, large, so ancient level dragons just fall from the sky dead. And thinking through that process, the amount of creatures that would converge on the area to feed on that carcass, the amount of sentient, we're not talking about NPC or people yet, but intelligent monsters, sentient beasts that feed on it, but for more than just food. Sure, an ancient dragon provides a lot of meat, and that's where the creatures, or I should have said beasts up here, right? But the sentient beasts, they might know, hell, maybe it's just humanoids, right? Orcs and such. They might think these dragon things are magical in nature. Maybe by feeding on it, we build up fire resistance. Maybe we build up the ability to breathe fire. You know what I mean? So they think there's more to that food. You're going to have cults, of course, and various factions, groups of people, good and bad. You're going to have dragon hunters. You're going to have, Tiamat worshippers. You're going to have, scholars and arcane folk that want to study it. You might be messing with ley line energies. You see where this can go. And there's a wealth of stuff that can happen here, right? What kingdom, what nation is going to try and make claim to this? You know how, I think it was the first Thor's hammer hits? You see this in Super 8 and all these Close Encounters of the Third Kind stuff, right? Some weird phenomenon happens. All of a sudden, a group comes in and sort of militarizes the whole thing. They create a tent. You're no longer, they're investigating. You're no longer allowed to encroach on that area. And it now becomes Area 51, right? Imagine Dragonfall. Number one, the religious and the ramifications on faith in the world of why the hell are these dragons falling? How often? If, hey, there was a dragon fall over in the northeast of Eberron, some continent in Eberron, that happened. And then 7 days later, another dragon fell 100 miles to the west. Is there some relationship, or something to consider between the frequency of dragonfall? The separation. Are they only falling in specific areas? What does that mean? How long before someone is able to latch large chains and harpoons into it and pull it and drag it away from the area? Who lays claim to this dragon? What baby dragons, which when you're dealing with adult level, they're problems. What baby dragons come in to protect that mother that fell? You could see there's a lot that can come off of that, right? So I like that idea because it gives me just a really good, these 5 bullet points are kind of the anchors for me. Okay, they're the anchors to my campaign. I don't know where I want to go with it. I don't know which is the best one, but they just give me something that I can latch onto, right? Let's do this. We always have to be a little bit considerate of the fanciness of everything. This is kind of just design 101 rambling. Remember I said I'm just sort of creative rambling here, but okay. Next, I want to do something I may have mentioned, like, what would a 7-year-old draw? So maybe this is not a theme that you want to be enticing for a young kid. But this is exciting to me. And excitement, of course, doesn't have to be, everyone always likes to look at the train wreck, right? It's a horrible event, but it's a fascinating thing. So I'm not, enamored with living the life of Sopranos and drug deals and Godfather, but it's fascinating. And the Godfather movies are outstanding, right? It's a world we don't know about. And that's the beauty of a D&D, is you get to play in this kind of thing. I don't think I need to go much more than that. I think you get it. Joe Pesci movie. Something about that is interesting to me. Okay? Wait a minute. I said 5 bullet points, so I need to create another anchor. Sorry, I apologize. We'll go like this. And then we need to pretty up this whole thing. Now, is it necessary to do all of this sort of noodling and design? Here's the thing, guys. You are much more creative when you let the mind go where it's trying to tell you to go. Don't stop it. I don't know that these lines in this layout means anything, on what I'm going to present at the table, but it allows my mind the freedom to explore, and that's where I want to stay. And I think what it is by noodling. By doing this. Right now I'm about to do it. I'm thinking of it. Okay, and it doesn't matter if you don't have Photoshop and such, okay? It doesn't matter. But by doing this, I'm drawing a little bit, right? Yes, I'm sketching, I'm noodling, I'm just... This seems like it's mindless. Dude, get to it. Here's the thing. This is helping me stay in whatever side. Left brain, right brain. The creative side. The childlike mind. It's keeping me from getting too analytical. Yes, I know I'm drawing like definitive straight lines and I'm being obsessive about it, but I'm not trying to say, hey, that's all the cool stuff with Dragonfall, but is that going to work? Is it any good? Has someone else done that? Have I done that already? And so on and so forth. Because once you do that, you start cutting out your ideas and your creative flow, because now I'm trying to make sense of it. Don't make sense of it. Right now we're looking at the giant umbrella that is to... Here's some really cool kind of analogy metaphor stuff. Imagine these 5 bullet points, these 5 anchors, are the cloud that hangs over Eberron and my campaign world. I don't care what Eberron says for adventures and hooks and stories. I'll weave that stuff into these 5 later. But these 5 form the cloud. And as the raindrops fall from that cloud, every one of those drops, which there's hundreds of millions, billions, are the little pulses of interesting gameplay that a PC might be able to latch onto. And as long as I can adhere to, and I as the DM can make that rain cloud, but let the drops sometimes pour on the PCs, let the PCs respond to that by saying, stay with me here, by saying, hey, we're getting soaked and we don't like that. So let's procure all the raincoats we can so that we can stay among this pouring rain and not get wet. I let them adapt to all those little dots, all those little raindrops, right? These are gameplay anchors. They may go this way. They may go this way. This is how I don't railroad. The rain cloud is kind of my overarching idea, but they're going to decide whether they want to shelter or whether they want to fight out in the rain. Okay, that's kind of really high thinking, flighty stuff there, but it's just to essentially say, I can come up with the overarching idea, but I want to let them respond to those ideas accordingly, okay? So let's get back to this. Dragonfall, we have drugs and gangsters. Aliens, I like that. Now, I'm always reminded whenever I write that word, Vasquez, let's rock! Awesome movie, Sigourney Weaver, right? I'm not talking about that. Yes, I know Eberron is sort of high fantasy in a way, right? It's a lot more high tech stuff. Magic, low level magic permeates all of society, but I'm not talking about getting into the sci-fi element here. What I'm talking about is just sort of strange and unusual. Okay? I've been playing a lot of Guild Wars 2 lately, and there is this like blighting pod, which is to say it's just a large bulbous mass of Mind Flayer tentacle, not Mind Flayers, but tentacles, plus, let's just say Stranger Things, right? Just weirdness. Okay? I'm not trying to play into race and, xenomorph and what xenophobia or anything like this. I'm comfortable with all the players at my table, so we don't have a lot of taboo subjects. But I want to just keep this with the idea, obviously minus the gangster and drug stuff. Very 7-year-old fun, right? They always draw this guy. Right? There it is. They draw that. So I want to just keep it kind of like that. So just things that are not explained, weirdness. And in the world of D&D and Eberron, you really got to go out there, right? So I want to do that. Speaking of what 7-year-olds draw. Oh, sorry. I already have Dragonfall. I don't want that. That's the wrong one. I meant this. Dinosaurs. It's dinosaurs. Now, I don't know a whole lot about Eberron. I understand the overall, I read the introduction of it. It's coming off of a 100-year war. I understand a certain essence of what races fit in and why the Warforged are there, why they were created. But all the nuances of, Seer and the Mournland and Drome and all this stuff, I'll get into that. I'll take this stuff and I'll start to fit it in the world. That way it makes it feel like, okay, we're playing in Eberron, right? Yeah, I might have cool ideas, but I need to attach it. I don't want my PCs to feel like, dude, the story could have happened in Forgotten Realms. This could have happened in Wildmount. No, I want to attach it, and that's why I'm using Eberron. So yes, that is the backdrop, but the creative phase does not attach to Eberron yet. I do remember reading something about halflings, I think, that are like dino riders, okay? So I'll find some direct attachment there. All right, and then you know what? I'm going to take a quick break. I'll edit this out. Okay. And the last one is I want to kind of work with vampires. I'm not necessarily thinking Curse of Strahd, but I'm leaning more towards Underworld. Doesn't mean I'm going to use werewolves, but and 30 Days of Night. Now this, I'm getting a little more outside of kid territory, once again, similar to the drug lord stuff. Because 30 Days a Night, if your 7-year-old shouldn't be watching that. They're a lot more, they're monsters, right? Those vampires are very feral. They're just there to eat. It's not, high society, Twilight. They're glowing, sparkling, drinking wine up in their mansion, 500 years old, talking about ruling the world. No, these guys are just straight up annihilating everybody. So I want to go, in essence, a little more dark and a little more gritty. Not necessarily Barovia idea, where it's just depressing and, desperate people. The vampire aspect itself, maybe not the ramifications of what it's done to the world, where it's darkened the whole world. Just the vampires themselves are more monstrous. There's not a whole lot of parlay, per se. Okay? So, that's kind of where I want to go. Now, here's what I do. Obviously, I've got a bunch on Dragonfall. That's something that has been lingering in my mind the longest. The other ones I kind of came up with right there on the fly. What I need to do is, some of these are going to be sort of hashed out and detailed much more in depth later. Okay? They're going to be something that comes about in the campaign at a much later stage. I might poke and prod and introduce them early on, session 1, when the PCs are low level. But if I was to just definitively put them in various tiers, some of these things might not come to fruition or get through the entire story arc, until endgame campaign stuff. Where some of these things I think are a little more conducive towards getting off the ground running. And for that, what I want to do is I want to really adhere to sort of the 7-year-old thing of what sounds the most exciting. Okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to latch on to vampires, and I'm going to latch on to Dragonfall. Okay? The gangster drug stuff, they'll get into that later on. That might just be some key NPCs that they meet, right? But I don't want to throw them down that rabbit hole yet. Aliens, I don't know where I want to go with that yet. I want to have a certain aspect of familiarity so that they can latch onto some things that make sense from, okay, this sounds Eberron to me. Okay, this is something that would make sense for a level 1 barbarian. So I don't want to get way out there where they feel like, okay, are we going into like Planescape and otherworldly weirdness yet? I don't want... Think Stranger Things. Yes, you want to establish the weirdness of it, but you want to invest yourself into 11 and the kids and learn the characters and get a feel for this is what it was like in the 1980s. And then you can start episodes 2, 3, and 4, start getting into some explaining the weirdness of things, right? So these are going to happen at some point, hopefully. Now, here's the other interesting part. Since I don't want to railroad them, there may be something that later on the PCs don't want to, I'll poke and prod at gangsters and drug deals, but they don't want to get into that. It's okay. Any one of these, depending on how far you go with it, can be the anchor for an entire campaign, okay? But what we are creating here is the essence of what do I need to create one night of gameplay. 5 to 7 hours, all right? So let's look at these two. I'm going to latch onto vampires. Let's start with this guy, okay? One thing vampires do is they simply give me NPCs, right? So here's what I'm going to do. There's sort of a few bullets that I want to create here. I need stuff that's going to get me through the time. I saw this, I read about this before. All of your gameplay hooks, your anchors, always have a secret. There's something that you as the DM know. That how sort of overt or how soon you want to reveal it, whether you want to just constantly hint at it and that secret is not revealed until way into the campaign, or whether it's, a one aha moment where they get it. And I'm not talking secret doors, just something that you as the DM know, something that you can keep and hold on to. And I think those secrets become so much fuel and provide excitement. Because even when I'm running it at the table, there's an element of like, oh, God, I wish they would find this, or, oh, I can't wait to tell them this. And I'm not talking about, something as simple as, oh, there's actually another door behind the bookshelf, right? Secret door type stuff. I'm talking about like a massive sixth sense, right? For those that didn't get it, at the very end, Bruce Willis is dead. Spoiler alert. A massive twist on like the story and the plot. Like, whoa, I did not see that coming. That's the type of secret. So for all of my little elements, right? For every one of these, what's the secret about Dragonfall? There's a secret about this. There's a secret about this, this, and this. And then some of the individual parts, there's secrets in there. When you keep doing that, you're creating content because you start asking questions of, wait a minute, who knows about the secret? What does the secret mean? What are the ramifications of not knowing it? When they learn about it, what are the consequences of it now that they know and have discovered that secret? And you start asking all these questions, and in those answers, that's how you start creating content. So, the 3 bullet points that I want to latch onto vampires and Dragonfall are 5 to 7 hours. I need to get through the game. The session, I should say. I need to have some sort of secret with it. And then what I like to call tie-in or flowchart. This is how I start building consistency. And it's really important. I'm not creating a one-shot adventure. I'm creating a campaign. I need to have a beginning, middle, end of my story. Now here's the interesting part. I don't really know where the middle is, and I don't know where the end is. It's my player's journey and their reaction to the things I present to them that change. If the end is up here, right? Remember the big rain cloud. I want to allow my players to have an entire web of fingers. They can go left. They can go not quite so far left, but still left. You get it. They can go here. They can go here, here, here. I want them to go everywhere. That way it doesn't feel like I'm railroading. You're going straight there to the top and you're getting to the end of it. They can go anywhere they want. Eventually, they're all going to weave their way and knot up and branch towards that major rain cloud. But how they get there, I need to allow my PCs to experience that. But also, if I don't entirely know the exact defining shape of my rain cloud, as they're moving their way through that and their fingers are weaving and knotting their way through, my rain cloud might start to change shape a little bit. And that means I'm allowing the end to sort of be permeable. Is that the word, right? Able to flux and be fluid. And that's what creates a living, breathing world, okay? So I know I need to create 5 to 7 hours of gameplay. I want a secret, and then I need to tie it in flowchart. Tie it in flowchart might be, how do I attach vampires and Dragonfall eventually into some of these other 3 things, the dinosaurs, aliens, and gangsters? Or how do I tie it into the world of Eberron? Now delving into the lore of the Dragon Mark houses, and the Lord of Blades, and Drome, and the way the Zalargo gnomes are, you know what I mean? So it feels like it's part of an Eberron campaign and not just my own world or something I'm making up, okay? So here we go. 5 to 7 hours. One of the best ways to chunk through a session of gameplay is I need to have a fight. That is also something I know my players, they're kind of murder hobos. They just love to fight. If they can fight, they're good. So I need to have a fight. For Dragonfall, I'm going to kind of hash out both at the same time. Some kind of a fight. We'll leave room. What else is going to get me through 5 to 7 hours? Introduction. This is a bit about... So this one I'll actually hash out details now. Meet the key NPC. Introduction. Who tells them of the event? Who informs them of this phenomenon known as Dragonfall? Here's the other thing with my 5 to 7 hours. We're just starting. I've already told all my players, and they have access to D&D Beyond, right? They get invited to that campaign. Please make your characters. With 10 players, here's what's going to happen. 2 people have never even started on their damn characters yet. They haven't even read my House Rules Primer yet. It just happens. Another 3 aren't done with their characters yet. It's a freaking level 1 character, but there's questions they have, and they just don't know. There's not a lot of moving parts is the point. But 50% of my group isn't going to be done. Once we get all 10 people at the table and we have a couple of players that haven't made their characters yet, there's going to be all, oh, you should play this. No, I'm not playing that. You know what? If you want to play that, you do it. I'll make a new character. The point is, in the 5 to 7 hours I need to get through that first session, 2 hours are going to be spent on making characters again, or, hashing out those introduction details. So I don't really need to focus on a full 6 hours. I probably need to get through a good 4.5 hours. So introduction, they're going to meet the NPC. What else is going to chew through some time? You know what? That's it for now. That's good. We've got a fight and introduction. That'll chew through some time. Secret. What's the secret about this vampires? The PC's key NPC, this one's kind of an easy one, is a vampire. They don't know that yet. I don't want, I'm not saying he's going to be the Curse of Strahd thing where he may not even be a villain, but somewhere, and I need to see details yet. I've had a couple of players send me their backgrounds, but I don't know what people are, I don't even know what they're playing, let alone background where I can start attaching it to the world of Eberron. Someone in there might be the holiest of holy cleric paladin and hates undead. And once they find out this guy's a vampire, all they want to do is burn him. But other people might be like, dude, that guy's been a vampire since we met him at level 1. We're level 9 now. He's given us all sorts of quests, and he's been our link to the world and our key NPC. But that reveal of the secret, that sixth sense moment, is going to perhaps change their relationship with this NPC, right? So that's my secret. That's the big one. Dragonfall. What's the secret? Dragonfall, this phenomenon, happens. This is a big one. This is a big boom. Because of the PCs. These dragons are falling because of something related to the PCs. That could be a certain, prophetic type of thing. I don't know where I want to go with that yet, but that's a big bomb drop. Because as you see with all those bullets there, all of the various things that happen as a result of Dragonfall, and if dragons are falling because of the PCs, whether because of something they're doing or because of one PC or whatever, I don't know. I don't know where I want to go with that yet, but when they realize that they're responsible for that indirectly, that's a big moment. And now, that's it. I only need the one secret because it's a big enough reveal, and how long I stretch that out, you can kind of have a bunch of bullet points under this if I wanted to. Now, tie-in and flowchart, okay? This is going to take a moment, so give me a, pause with me here and think with me. Maybe you're brainstorming your own ideas, not just on my vampires and Dragonfall, but your own, figuring out, how would I tie it into my world? So clearly I need to study. And this is real life. This is not studying in D&D speak. This is me as the real life person. I need to read more on Eberron and try and see, is there a place where there's a well-known coven of vampires? What location in the world of Eberron is definitely not where you'd want vampires to be? Like, there are undead hunters that are on every city street and every corner under every streetlight that's looking for these such things. You know what I mean? I don't want to reveal that secret too early, so I can't have something where I don't want it to also be in a place where you approach this key NPC and you notice that he opens a door which is really a wall of bats. And there's a wolf in the corner howling, and he's only ever meeting you at night, and there's no mirrors. You get it. But the area approaching his property smelled like garlic. You don't want to, you don't want it that overt. Like I said, Sixth Sense. Watch the whole movie first and then have the plot twist. Okay? So I need to study and find, because now I'm tying it into the world to make it feel like it's Eberron. Because here's the other good thing. Yes, I have all this coolness and all these ideas and this umbrella. But besides allowing my PCs and their actions and interaction with these things to shape the overall size and shape of my rain cloud, I want to let Eberron do that as well. There may be something within the Eberron book and the inspiration and the creative fuel that Keith Baker, the creator of Eberron, and WotC has designed, that I might now tie it into my stories, and it may get me thinking through things that I didn't previously think of. So now I'm allowing the world and the setting to sort of shape my stories. But this has to come first. Don't confine yourself to the world. Come up with the cool bits. Notice, the idea of Dragonfall, other than dragons, gangsters and drug dealers, aliens, dinosaurs, and vampires, they can be very fantastical, but they're not attached to any world, or let alone D&D in and of itself. They're just cool things in media that just sound fun. Begin with that process. Okay, so clearly I just need to simply study Eberron. That's how I'll tie it into the world. Tie to Eberron. I don't know how I'm going to do that yet, because I don't know enough about the Gazetteer and the locations of Eberron. But now, the other thing I need to do is, I'm going to tie vampires into Dragonfall. The vampire has info that moves them, that moves the PCs towards the whole Dragonfall incident stuff. Not towards the secret thing where they realize that it's happening because of them, but just the introduction of it, okay? So, how do I tie in Dragonfall? Well, tie it into the world, once again, study Eberron. I need to learn all the little nuances of what is the role of dragons in this world? Do they exist? I know there's Cyberus and Kyberus, whatever their names are, and Eberron themselves, the three dragon, primordial dragons or whatever they're called. But beyond that, what kind of dragon fell? Is it a red? Is it a blue? What does that mean? Are the chromatics the traditional chromatics in normal D&D versus the bronze and, the good aligned ones? Is there a such thing as alignment with dragons, or are they all just monstrous creatures? You know what I mean? That type of thing. Do they slumber? Do they lair? Are they like a Tarrasque? How epic and legendary are they, and so on? So I need to study Eberron, right? Because that'll give me some fuel that'll help flesh out this whole Dragonfall premise. But now, to tie it into the further story, Vampires is going to tie in to Dragonfall. The Dragonfall, this is going to go really far and deep here. It's not going to be, they're not going to get beginning, middle, and end about this whole Dragonfall prophecy and story, obviously in one session, right? This reveal that, hey, it's happening because of you guys, that might not happen till way, way later. Because as you start to think through this stuff, you also have to consider the actual mechanical bits of what sort of conflict are they going to be coming up against? What obstacles are now in their way? We're dealing with Dragonfall, entire cults and factions, and people that want to lay claim to this stuff, and large beasts that are feeding on it. The PCs can't handle that at level 1, so I maybe don't want to have them get too deep into the Dragonfall thing until they're literally powerful enough to handle the obstacles. Otherwise, you keep having all these like stopgaps, right? Where it's like, cool, we're delving into Dragonfall, but we don't have the firepower to deal with it, so we back off and we're pushed away again. Which means we don't get more information. At some point, they need to be powerful enough through magic invisibility or their rogue high enough in skill to sneak into the military compound to get the real nuts and bolts of what's happening here, you know? So sometimes how far you go and how quickly you reveal secrets or you present situations is dependent on what level the PCs are. Sometimes you need to video game it, and they need to branch off of this. I want to try and have everything I'm doing, every random encounter, yes, I know I just said random, but every event somehow feel like it ties into one of these 5. And that's what keeps these as the anchors. One thing I read about is really good concise writing when you're creating like a role-playing book or something. Figure out what your main pillars are, what your anchors are, and everything you do reinforces those. If it doesn't, throw it out. It doesn't need to be there. Because there's enough depth and nuance within each of these 5 things that they can go a million different directions. Literally, you can create 50 bullet points for each one. And now you've got, what, 250 bullet points? That's enough for 2 years of campaign, folks, I promise you. So there's enough there. I don't need to have overarching big stories about demonic invasion and other stuff. And that's the other thing, is by creating this now up front, it kind of tempers your creative tangents and flightiness of like, well, somewhere in the middle of the campaign, you're going to start playing a video game, and you're going to love that story as well. And then you're going to realize that it's like a Mass Effect thing, and there was like, you know, a ship that collapsed, and it blah, 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 and people want to discover who's on it, and now there's the piracy, and ooh, I saw Pirates of the Caribbean. You see where I'm going with that. Keep within these 5 templates. Okay? So, how do I tie in Dragonfall? Gangster and drug deal. And that's where I'm going to go for now. They meet the finance group behind the Dragonfall operation. Let me make sure I'm still on record. I am. I'm almost done here, I think. So that's how Dragonfall ties into some other stuff. Again, just because they got introduced to Dragonfall does not mean that I now need to introduce them to this whole gangster drug, you know, loop. But somewhere in here, you know, a military thing or some group steps in and takes over the whole project of Dragonfall. There needs to be someone with money there, right? To hire the dwarven guards necessary to make sure that no one enters the bubble of Dragonfall, who's going to pay for those guards, right? If a guy says, I will outfit the entirety of your dwarven stronghold with all the plate mail armor you want, if you guys sign a contract that says you're going to guard the Dragonfall site for 7 months, right? So there is some major Bill Gates type guy with that much money that's financing the whole thing. Right? And that guy he's gained that money, and he's become that because they don't know this initially, right? That could be tying now into the secret, which I haven't delved into yet. The secret of the gangster drug thing might be that the same guy who's financing the dragon, you see where this is going. And then maybe something within the gangster drug thing, like the 2 royal guard of that drug lord, are vampires. That ties Notice, I only have vampires tying into Dragonfall. And then Dragonfall ties into gangsters and drugs. But maybe the gangster drug ties into vampires. You don't need to have, a direct... If it bounces to here, it needs to bounce directly back, right? Create your game of the bouncing ball, where as it bounces, it might go, right? You start creating this magic symbol. It's not just always a direct. Because notice when I'm doing that, if I'm creating a flowchart or a graph, you now have highs and lows. And it's always like you can predict there's a peak and then we're down in the valley. Then there's a peak and a valley. And if you were to apply this to gameplay, that's what your pacing is going to fall like. And the problem with that is it becomes predictable. When you have this, this allows you to make it fluid. I mentioned that earlier. Of gameplay is here, and then it dips for a little bit. And that doesn't mean that it's more boring. It's just the gameplay goes to a lull. They're not fighting as much. They're kind of investigating. They're learning things in town, and then bam! But notice, this goes backwards. They're fighting, but it feels like they're investigating something that they learned about way over here. And then it goes really far backwards and goes downhill. Now they're going back to the beginning. But as they're level 7 now, they're dealing with threats that were once at level 1, but it's over here. And this is what creates interest, because now they're back to where they were at level 1, but their resources are so much higher because they're significant. Now they have the invisibility spell. That changes how they interact with this stuff. And now look where this goes from here. You know what I mean? It kind of flows back through here, and then here, all this stuff, and then it comes here, and then it just has this horizontal point, and then you get it. There's so much just fluidity, interest, and most importantly, it allows the campaign to flow in a much more interesting fashion than this. And I feel like that's a good sort of end point. I think I might need to create another video, right, of talking about where do I go from here? And maybe you'll start seeing some props of what I'm creating. But I know my sort of next job, yes, I'll turn the camera on, but behind the scenes, if I was to do this without video purposes, I need to create a fight here. They're not going to fight that vampire. They don't know he's a vampire. Remember, that's part of the secret. But I need to create a fight. Something on the way to meet the vampire. Again, let me keep saying, they don't know he's a vampire. On the way to meet this NPC, there's a fight. Or, to get further information from him, he has something, I have rats in the cellar. Clear them out for me and I'll tell you all you need to know. Right? Typical stuff. They're going to introduce. They're going to meet him. So I need to detail out. What does he look like? What's his stat block? Blah, blah, blah. The secret, I'm going to keep that for myself, but I'm going to make sure I keep notes of that. And then I need to read and figure out more about Eberron. Because maybe there's some bullet points I'm missing here that I will learn about and add later on when I realize, oh, Eberron says that vampires are such and such. Okay? And then at maybe the end of the session, because remember, I'm not just focusing on vampires. I want both of these, vampires and Dragonfall, to be something that comes up during session 1. So, somewhere in here, the vampire has some information. Hey, there's a guy I work with. He's been talking about this weird event. You might want to go investigate it. And then that's how they get introduced to Dragonfall. And there, on the way to meet him, they have a fight. Or he has the same thing, rats in the cellar. Please help me out. I'll tell you more about Dragonfall if you help me fight. Or he tells them about Dragonfall. They're like, ooh, that sounds really damn cool. Remember, I'm allowing them to flow. If they don't want to pursue this whole vampire thing anymore, other than he's a cool NPC, we like this guy. We want to get into the Dragonfall thing. Maybe on the way to the Dragonfall site, they get into a fight. One of those mercenary guards are like patrolling out far. And they're like, you can't approach. Well, but we want to just see what's up. Like, we heard there's a curious thing. Go away. And then there's a fight there, right? That's going to chunk me through 5 to 7 hours of gameplay. So I need to, for me, prep time, I need to take care of these bullet points. Okay? And that was the indication of the Photoshop telling me, you're done. Okay, that's a creative ramble if there ever was one, but hopefully something here stuck. Something here helps. And I think more importantly, though, it's not like I'm fishing for critiques and would you do different. Remember, guys, there's no right way, best way, only way. And I'll go against some of the things that I've mentioned in my advice and videos about what you should do. I am not a new DM. I've been doing this for 35 years, and other than my wife and son, who I know the most, everyone else at my table I've played with for about 23 years. So I have the most familiar group of people, and they kind of help inform the direction I'm going with things. But maybe something there was entertaining and cool. What would you do with your Dragonfall, gangster, drug lord, alien-infested, dinosaur vampire campaign? That's all I have for you folks. Thanks everyone for watching, and take care.